The Lord be with you. Thank you all for coming today. I want to introduce our speakers today. First, I'd like to introduce Lynn Jordal Martin. And Lynn, you'll have to come up here to be on camera. And Lynn has been the mentor for EFM for over 20 years. So can we thank her for that ministry? And the person next to her is my husband, Patrick. So Patrick, thank you for coming and being part of this presentation. So we're going to pray at the end because you're going to pray with us. So we're going to begin with Patrick giving you an introduction to the videos. Take it away, Patrick, or Pat, as you like to be called.
You're going to change calling me something different after 38 years?
40 years.
Well, Cheryl said she wanted to do this class and about joy and how to live joyfully, have joy in your life. And I start to think about it. Where's there like a state of joy that you can universally point to and not deny? And nobody can say, no, that's not. And we found it because I remember a day in 1988. I couldn't sleep. There was no cable TV back then. And I found the Dodgers and the Oakland A's playing baseball in the World Series. And it was late. It was after midnight because of West Coast, East Coast, or whatever. But there was a scene in that game, the first game. They got to the bottom of the ninth. There were 2 outs. There was a runner on base, and the Dodgers were down a run. And they brought out a player named Kirk Gibson who had 1 pulled hamstring and 1 damaged kneecap. So he couldn't run. So it was totally a Hail Mary. And he couldn't even get on base. They didn't think he couldn't hit a base hit. So it had to be a home run. And that's the setting for how it starts. And then we're going to watch a couple other pieces of video, and then Lynn is going to talk some about what we want you all to do in communicating and sharing with each other.
Hit it, Lucy.
But the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
Where's Neil? Lucy, he's giving you signals. Hold on a second. Don't watch this. Don't close your eyes. Close your eyes. Go back here. Neil. I don't know. Neil, if you don't mind coming up. Neil, where are you? Oh, he's coming. Neil has been so wonderful in helping us with this, so I don't know what happened. I'm sure it's our error.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone. But the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
So could we just do it with the slideshow part of it? I know that it's not as nice, but it gets the video. Could we go back to slideshow? Because it did work like that yesterday. Okay. So Lucy, if you could click right there. Okay, there it is.
Right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
Can we see it again? Susan wants to see it again. Absolutely. Neil, replay. Just like television. All right, here you go, Susan. This is for you. You weren't clapping.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Look at those fans. Okay, so let's go to the second. This is a new slide, and it's not mine. Let's go to the second one. This is where he's being interviewed.
I guarantee you this, the parking lot at Chavez Ravine is empty. Nobody has left their seats, and now the man of the hour is back out on the field. Kirk Gibson, have you ever had a feeling like this?
Well, it's hard to match, I'll say that, and you know, it's I guess a storybook. I was very disappointed today because I knew I couldn't play. I knew I'd be a detriment, and I got an injection today, and I was very sore, but I saw the opportunity. I knew we could get a guy on base. The pitcher was coming up, and I figured if I got out there and the fans started cheering, that I could suck it up for 1AB, and maybe something good would happen, and it happened.
How much pain were you in at the plate?
Well, it was tough. You know, pushing up my front foot, and my other hamstring was hurting me. I got two bad legs, but you know, when I got two strikes on, I just decided to buckle it down, and Mike got the second. I knew I really didn't have to hit a home run. I kind of was going to shorten up and try and drive the ball the other way, and I got a breaking ball that he got out. It was low, the ball I like to hit, and I was just fortunate. The good Lord gave me this wonderful moment.
Did you know it was gone the instant you hit it?
A pretty good idea, and you know, we've had some tough times, but you know, what a team. We've been saying it all year, and if it wasn't for my teammates, I wouldn't even have got the opportunity to remember this moment.
We were standing in the runway and we could hear you taking batting practice off the tee back at the end of the tunnel. We didn't even think you'd be available for pinch hitting duty, and I know Lasorda walked back to talk to you. How did that conversation go?
Well, I've been in the training room all day or all night getting treatment, and in fact, I heard Vince Scully say they were panning the dugout looking for me, saying it didn't look like I was going to be able to play, and I said, that's enough. Went and put an ice bag on there and numbed my knee up best I could. Hit some off the tee in there, and I had a bat boy come in and ask Tommy to come in. I wanted to talk to him. I said, go ahead and pinch hit for Alfredo with Mike. If we get a guy on, I'll go in there and give you my best. I think I can do it and give you a good shot, and that's what it's all about.
Thoughts and images that went through your mind as you rounded the bases?
Well, I just kept telling myself, these are the type of circumstances you enjoy most, and you perform even better under these conditions, and thank the good Lord, it all happened for us.
Absolutely. All right, Patrick, do you want to introduce the last video?
So
And then we don't have to worry about technology.
when I saw these videos together, I said to Cheryl, this looks like a EFM theological reflection. Like, you get to see a person's
Bluetooth
life
disconnected. Waiting for connection.
through different seasons of it. And Joy, we just watched it. That's a great thing. But, you know, there was a pitcher in that ball game, and his name's Dennis Eckerly. And he has a video. It's like 30 years. You think I'm happy? No, it still hurts. That's what he said. So there are sorrows. And sometimes we have to carry them for a long time as well. But when you think about that, you can see the same threads of the individual show through all those different cycles. And I think that's where joy comes, when you're attached to God in a way that doesn't really matter if it's a good or bad day, you still know where you're going. So, and Lynn, she does EFM. So I said to Cheryl, we should bring her in and let her do it. So then after this, she'll take over, but we want you guys to talk.
We want this last video. So it's video number 3. Okay, here it is. That's it. Yes, I heard someone say, thank God Neil's here.
Bluetooth is connected.
Okay.
Do you know that moment, that home run, is considered the #1 moment in Los Angeles sports history?
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, and
know that moment, that home run, is considered the #1 moment in Los Angeles sports history.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, and it's hard to get your arms around. The condition I was in for that home run, I wanted to be up there.
You couldn't walk.
I hit the home run, we won game 1. And man, let's give credit where credit is due. I sat the bench the rest of the time, was a cheerleader, and they brought it home. And that was even a greater feat than what I accomplished in the 1988 World Series.
In honor of that moment, Gibson returned to Dodger Stadium, threw out the first pitch on opening day. And he signed the right field pavilion seat where his historic home run landed, seat 88. You can buy tickets for that seat, plus the one next to it, for $300. The money goes directly to Gibson's foundation, raising money to fight Parkinson's. It's a disease that's slowly taking hold, but a challenge he quickly stood up to.
When did you realize or even think you might have Parkinson's?
In April of 2015, when I went on the air for Fox Sports Detroit on opening day for the Tigers, I was all cockeyed like this, and you know, when I went on there and I started to feel anxiety, which I'd never really felt in my life, my producer was in my ear that day saying, "Hey, you saw a ghost." I mean, I did. And you know, Parkinson's, you have what they call mask face. You kind of lose the, you know, you have this stare look like this, so it's hard for me to smile. But you know, it's something that I can work through.
Gibson thought the years of hard work were simply taking a toll on his body. But after that day, he started asking questions. Didn't take long for doctors to give him an answer he never considered.
We went in there, and I mean, really within the day, they knew that the Parkinson's was probably what I had, and I had to do some tests to confirm that. And you know, then it's really official that you have Parkinson's disease. And you know, that's a good kick in the balls. I mean, it's like, holy, you don't really know what it means. You know, you think maybe the worst, you know, you're going to die. The reality of it is it's not a death sentence, and people with Parkinson's don't really die from Parkinson's. It does make your normal a new normal.
How are you different now than you were?
Well, I'll give you a poem.
Okay.
It's called Smaller. It kind of talks about, do you want me to play it for you?
Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll play it. It's going to take me a little, it'll take me a little bit more time here.
Take your time.
My world got smaller. My handwriting. My voice. It crept up on me in micro increments until it arrived with a name. And then it became big and scary. And I didn't want it. I may be smaller, slower,
but I'm still me.
It's hard to really explain to you what it's like to have Parkinson's disease, because part of it's Parky, part of it's age, part of it's just me being crazy and nuts. I fight against it on a daily basis, and I try to encourage others to make that journey to fight it as well. We're working on many fronts. It takes endless hours. You know, I'm passionate about it, just like I was when I came here in 1988. And I may not succeed, you know what? But I'm gonna die trying.
Thank you, thank you, Neil. Patrick, do you want to say any more about that last video,
Just
and then
that
we'll turn it up to Lynn.
When he said, "I'm going to die trying," and when he said, "Put me in, Tommy, I can do it," like that's the same. That's what I'm saying. That's a character and a person that does not change. And he referenced his cherishment of God many times. So I thought it was worthwhile just to see it, but actually encourage you all to talk to each other and think through in your own lives points that were joyful and how they interacted with points later that may have been sorrowful, and how that cycle comes around.
Lynn?
There you go. First of all, I want to thank Lucy and Neil. I think most of us in this room are not what are called digital natives. So technology was not our first language, and I really appreciate all the ways that you serve us through technology, Lucy, in addition to being our senior warden, because it's not something we grew up with. Thank you for that. In EFM, which is also known as Education for Ministry, which is kind of a clunky name for a really great 4-year seminar, we practice something called theological reflection. And theological reflection is basically trying to look at moments in your life or your whole life through a theological lens. And how do we do that? In this video, for example, we might ask, what is the world like in that moment for the man who hit the home run? And it's filled with incredible joy. You can also call that creation. That's sometimes what we label it. So what is the world like? It's filled with joy. We reflect on that. But what causes pain? Well, like Patrick said, the guy who threw out the pitch that gave the home run, it hurts him 30 years later that they didn't win. And also, what causes pain? He wasn't able to really fully participate in the game. He was able to have this incredible moment, but he wasn't able to even sit in the dugout in the beginning. And so that also causes pain. And sometimes we call that sin. If you think about things that cause pain or that you have done to cause pain, sometimes we call that a version of sin. And then when we walk through the reflection process, we talk about a moment of turning. Like, what changed? So he went on to work for Fox Sports and had a great career there. But he's ready to go on air, and his hand is clenched like this. He's already starting to have mask face. So that's a moment of turning. We sometimes call that metanoia, which is a really theological, churchy word. But there is a moment when something happens, when maybe God tips the scale in a certain way. And in that moment, he began to ask questions. He realized he learned he had Parkinson's, and then he tipped it into a force for good. So we call that the moment where there's this question about what should I do, how does this work, where you're turning, we call that judgment and metanoia. And the last piece of it is we call it redemption. But think of it, what gives rise to celebration? And what gives rise to celebration is now he's working really hard to work on research and education and fundraise for scientists to make changes to help us learn more about Parkinson's and eventually fund a cure for Parkinson's. So there's a whole arc, if you look at it, from that home run to this new form of a life-giving purpose for him, which is, as I said, which we call redemption. And some of you know I've been really interested in a book I read a couple of years ago at the height of the pandemic, and I especially turned to it when my daughter was launched into college, but desperately homesick, acutely homesick, to the point that I was fearful I might have to pull her out of Amherst. And I was really worried about this. So I started listening to this book written by a friend of mine called Life is in the Transitions. This is written by Bruce Feiler. He's written many best-selling books, everything from Walking the Bible to Moses, America's Prophet. But he studied 250 different people who had life transitions, from losing their limbs in Iraq to deaths, to getting a divorce, to losing a job. I mean, as we know, transitions are not just death, but they all come with grieving. And he identified in the people who worked through these transitions that he interviewed, he identified 3 major, I guess, movements. The first movement is what he called the long goodbye, grieving what was lost. And the baseball player had to grieve that he's lost his ability to be fully functioning as an athlete the way that he was. So you have to grieve that. You have to go through it, the long goodbye. You have to say goodbye to the life that is not going to be anymore. And then there's something that Bruce called the messy middle. And that is this process of sifting, like deciding what is it I want to keep in my life and what is it that I want to let go. And in my own life, my husband died, and eventually after about a year, I decided we should sell our house. And so I was trying to figure out, should I move to a different town? Where should I go? And in the end, what I decided to do is sell our house, stick with that plan, but I stayed in the same town. So what did I want to keep and what did I want to let go? And then what Bruce identified is if you manage to go, and I believe it's very possible, quite possible, I really encourage you in your transitions to work on these movements. But the last movement is what he called, he calls it, shoot, now I can't remember. But basically it's a celebration. It's the new beginning. That's what he called it, the new beginning. And in my case, I definitely know I am in the new beginning. I love the house we bought. I love that we stayed in the same town. And all kinds of new things have unfolded after those 3 movements. And you can see that in the theological reflection. You can see that in these videos. But these steps that lead us from suffering, the grief, into this period kind of sorting it out and into joy. So I give you that as another way of looking at transitions and joy. And now we'll turn it over to the tables.
So in your tables, turn around and you can share a moment of joy, any kind of moment of joy. Share also a moment of sorrow. And then the third part is, if you can, now you may not be able to, identify when you made the shift. I think you called it sifting, when you made from sorrow to, again, joy. So we have 10 minutes, so we want you to talk in your group, and then we're going to bring us all back together, I promise. So this is how to live a joy-filled life. And you can talk, it could be marriage, it could be work, relationship, whatever you suit. So you guys face each other and have a conversation. Okay, we are going to bring you back because we are mindful of time. We know that at 12 o'clock, you all will start walking out of here. And I'm going to call on a few people, which I have permission to do so. And Lynn, or Patrick, would you mind if I give you a mic and I point to the people? So would you go to that table back there where Esther and David are? And I asked, give me an example of a moment of joy. And so if you could first ask Esther to say her moment of joy.
Good morning. I'm not get used to speak in public. Yeah, but I'm proud to say that my most enjoyable moment is the moment many years ago I got baptized. At that moment, I really feel, after I get out of the water, I really feel something refreshed. Yeah, it's a kind of, it's a moment thing. So from that moment, I even believe more in him. And then later years prove I was right, believe in him. So whatever happened, I will always forever believe in him. He will lead me to a brighter way. Yeah, but I know the course is gonna be very narrow and not so straightforward. So, but I know the end gonna be very bright. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. David, sitting next to her, a moment of joy.
When my children, I have two children, when they were born, I knew at the time, and it's been true, it gets seared into your brain, right? You never forget that moment. And in terms of faith, you know, you realize afterwards, through the Holy Spirit, you brought a life into this world. So those are two moments of joy.
That was beautiful, David.
You'll never forget.
How many of you said your birth, when you gave birth? Anybody? Okay, when your wife gave birth or your partner gave birth? Okay, so this is a perfect, you soon realize why I asked this of you, Dorothy. This is a perfect transition. Dorothy Belshaw is going to talk about the whole process.
Oh, I didn't want to do this, actually. I think I'll stay right where I am so I don't have to look at anybody. You may know our son, George. He sings in the men and boys choir. He is, I believe, now the tallest person in the men and boys choir. So if you don't know who he is now, maybe you do. He's 15, and the day he was born, we learned that he had a huge hole in his heart. And they said it's a very big hole it's all relative, but very big hole, and we think it's unlikely it will close, but there's nothing we can do about it today. So take him home and try to feed him, and we're going to weigh him every week, and if he fails to thrive, we'll have to do surgery. So for 9 weeks, we had 9 weeks of sorrow while we were watching him lose weight every week. Thanks, Cheryl. Anyway, it's a very good ending, obviously. So he had open heart surgery when he was 10 weeks old, and the doctor came out after 3 hours and said, done, we closed it, it's successful. And that should be the moment of joy, right? But really, it wasn't. It was, I think, the beginning of the moment of transition when we had to kind of find the faith that he was all right, right? And so I would say, so that was in November he was operated on. I would say the moment of joy was when he was christened, baptized, here in January of the next year at about 5 months old. And I think then we sort of felt it had stuck. And it was interesting at the time, the priest that we were speaking to about his situation, we wanted him baptized before the surgery. And he said no, he's going to be fine, and the baptism should be a moment of joy, not a moment of sorrow. And it was.
Dorothy, thank you for being brave and sharing that story. What's so funny, she said, George can't definitely share it because he'll cry. I heard that story about a year ago from George at Messy Church, and it has always stood with me, and I was wondering today if you would share that story. May I have another volunteer? Anybody want to share a moment of joy or a moment of sorrow and how you made that transition? Okay, Marla?
My father died suddenly. I was 30 years old, and he was the love of my life. Mother was wonderful too, but he was really the head of the household. And I was so upset. In fact, when at the cemetery, I almost wanted to go into the grave with him. I was so, because he was just a very special, a holy man, a good man. And he helped everybody. Even I thought later I shouldn't have been even driving my 3 kids around. But he always said he wanted to come back as a bird. So I stepped out of the house one day. We had a lot of trees around my house. And I heard a bird whistling. And every time you're going to be okay, I still think of my dad all the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Another person would like to share. Don't be shy. Another person? Lynn, Patrick, parting thoughts, and then we're going to say our prayer together.
Well, one thing we didn't say is that Patrick has also been involved with Education for Ministry. He was also a mentor, and that's why he saw those videos and not only identified the joy part and the sorrow part, but was able to bring it to us in this theological way. So we want to thank Patrick for that as well. He's semi-retired right now from EFM, but I'm trying to drag him back into it. So those are, just try to keep in mind, like when these things happen, try to think about where's God in this? Where's God in this? And I try to practice gratitude every day. I'm sure that many of you have read about that. But I think that is also really healing, that even in really difficult moments, what is there that I can be grateful for? And what is there that I can learn from this, even in kind of the deepest pit that we might go down into? And I really do think that joy is a piece of sorrow, and sorrow is a piece of joy, and they go together. So if you are in sorrow right now, I encourage you to know that joy is on the other side. And if you are joyful, enjoy it, lean into it, relish it, because surely there was some sorrow that got you to that spot.
That was beautiful, Lynn. Thank you. All right, if you all would please stand and grab your card. And what we're going to do is the high voices are going to do the first verse, the low voices, the second verse, and then we're going to have a blessing on everyone. Let us pray. High voices. I will exalt you, Lord, for you lifted me out of the depths and did not let my enemies gloat over me. You, Lord, brought me from the realm of the dead. You spared me from going down to the pit.
Sing the praises of the Lord. You, his faithful people, praise his holy name.
For his anger lasts only a moment, but his favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. And may the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen. Susie, will you dismiss us? Thanks be to God. Alleluia, alleluia.
COVID has shut down